Well, hello. Not sure how long this one's going to go today. Just trying to find a new path. Got lots of different things going on. There's okay. So I've got two cameras going on because I want to be able to take an image of the pages that I'll be reading. Because considering I'm an egghead and that sort of thing, all I can do is add what I've actually read. So the only thing that I can actually provide in essence is, for example, right there, those are some of the books that I will be going over. So we have this book by the Dalai Lama. Okay, it is Ethics for a New Millennium. Still need to figure out this camera thing. Not going to work very well. So maybe if I put this thing up further. So I got to put it on top of the Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feinman, the 30 Years That Shocked Physics, and Interpersonal Development. Then we got the Here and Now. Okay, an appropriate approach to writing through perception. There. That's a really old book. Actually, my mom had that in the university. And then there's Life with Quality. So many want it, not many are able to achieve it. Right there. So not sure how that camera work is going to go, but on top of this stack of books, I will try to place the camera so that I can actually read the other. Just a moment. So let's see if this works. There we go. So now I just need to keep the camera up, and that would be with the teapot, I guess, hopefully. All right, so here we've got the Dalai Lama and Ethics for a New Millennium that I was thinking about reading for y'all today. Y'all for me, because there's nobody on the stream. I didn't let anybody know. I'm just winging it. I'm not even gonna know. I don't even know if this is going to stay up. We have Einstein never used flashcards, which is something that I will be going over later on. And I think today we'll start with Medicine Quest, In Search of Nature's Healing Secrets. That was something that got interest, so we'll be delving into that a little bit more. The next book in line would be The Elegant Universe by Brian Greene, translated into Portuguese, and I'll try and translate it back into English, but it's about superstrings, hidden dimensions, and the search for a definitive theory. There's also Fritz Capra and the Web of Life and all those things. The Tao of Physics is also one that Fritz Capra wrote that I read, was very entertaining. However, none of that is of interest to anyone but myself. So only I give a shit about all that stuff. So I just put out there what I find interesting, what I have found interesting. I'm not about entertainment, never have been. So we have Penguin Books, Medicine Quest, Search of Nature's Healing. So here we have Some Poison for Your Pain is chapter 1, And then The Eternal Quest, Chapter 2. The Fungus Among Us is Chapter 3. Drugs from Bugs, Chapter 4. Hideous Healers, Chapter 5. The Snakes and the Caduceus, Chapter 6. Under the Sea, Chapter 7. Plants of the Apes, Chapter 8, and Shamans, Chapter 9, and The Sugar Sickness, which is the afterword. This is a 200-page book, not that thick, so I will be going over it just a bit with y'all. So, nature distributed medicine everywhere. Pliny the Elder around 77 AD. So we've known about natural remedies and everything else. In fact, we've got, the Bible telling us that those who from the heavens came taught us to cut roots and separate herbs. So I don't know if it's good or bad, but hey, I've been drinking my teas, listening to my Reiki masters, and trying to take a new tack on life. But yeah, Zero watching in the house. Welcome, everyone. Oh, Mud Rabbit, hello. How you doing? Trying to find a new base. Conspiracy theory is too dangerous. Me talking about my egghead quantum stuff, well, especially in Portuguese, got no traction whatsoever. The entertainment section of just making people laugh and entertain is fun and levity and that sort of stuff, but it's not necessarily my raison d'etre, my essence. I don't know if this will be up because I didn't plan it out. I haven't projected it or prepared it or done anything that I would normally, in my arrogance, prepare for not wasting people's time. However, wasting people's time seems to be all pervasive, and those people are more popular than ever. I value your time, so if you're going to be listening to me, maybe you'll learn something. Actually, I'll be on Jacob's channel tonight, today, 4 o'clock Central Time, 5 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock my time, and then I'll be over on Ariel's channel with Leo later on in the evening, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. But that's a whole nother story. PDO's got a thing on me, and I'm nobody's favorite person at the moment. And I'm an arrogant prick, so what can I say? But let's start here. It's 200 pages, Medicine Quest. Let's just start with paragraphs. The first paragraph usually tells you what the entire chapter is about. So we'll read the first paragraph of some of these things and find out what we can figure out in the very beginning. I can vividly recall the mixture of horror and fascination I felt more than 40 years ago as I sat in the linoleum floor of my beloved grandmother's kitchen in Plaquemine, Louisiana, watching her inject herself with insulin to combat the dreaded diabetes that had killed so many family members back in the old country. The insulin kept the disease under control for many decades, but about 15 years ago, her body began to reject it, as is so often the case. Medicine only has its limits, right? And her inexorable decline commenced. Her bright and cheerful nature gave way to a persistent listlessness, no energy. And her eyesight began to fail. Yeah, diabetes, you can't see anything. So hopefully if y'all can see this, I'm reading straight from here. So hopefully. Her bright and cheerful nature gave way to a persistent listlessness, and her eyesight began to fail. She developed gangrene in both feet that slowly spread to her legs. That's something that I've seen in other diabetes patients as well. The lack of circulation and that sort of thing is your body starts to break down over a while. The doctor amputated both limbs, but to no avail. Her deterioration was slow and painful, and powerful painkillers provided minimal relief. The disease killed her 2 years later. So diabetes. We developed a drug called insulin to help prevent it, but the body rejected it after for many decades. And then 15 years before the writing of this book, it took her. However, insulin comes from a plant. I have a vine that is what the insulin is based on. Um, Thank you. I appreciate it. Um, so yeah, listening. So the basic, what we're going on here is medicine quest. Okay, we're going in search of nature's healing secrets. So we see how medicine itself, we all know that it's based on nature. They take the extracts and essences that they can actually patent and improve and that sort of thing out of nature and, make it profitable for big pharma. But we know that it's in nature. So I'm taking a combination of 8 different teas. Each one of them has their own different eccentricities, and that happens. And so, yeah, I'm looking at things in a different way. I never would have been drinking teas before or doing anything like that. But hey, between dengue, emphysema, and getting 50, you change your mentality. So I'm not going to be arrogant, not going to talk about, what all my formations in learning and education. I'm just going to focus on these books that have already been written by somebody else a while ago, and I'll bring them to you. If you consider them useful, great. If you don't, fine. It is what it is. So it was here at the bottom. So it was with some distress, sitting in a little thatch hut deep in the forest of the northeast Amazon, that I explained the illness and my desire to find new treatments for it. To the paramount shamans of the Tidio Indian tribe, my plea for assistance was met by a moment of silence, and then the shamans conferred quietly among themselves, the people who knew nature. Finally, my old mentor, the jaguar shaman, spoke on behalf of the group. My son, we do not know this disease that you described. We do not have a name for it. Do not recognize the symptoms as you described them. Do not have plants to treat it. Perhaps the disease exists, but we don't know it. We are sorry, we cannot help you. The shamans, the people living in nature. Okay, so I'm going to try something a little bit different. Let's see if we can change. I don't know how to change settings on this, but I will attempt. Layout. That's got nothing to do with it either. Oh, here we go. Nope. Also nope. Nope. Also no. So that's not working very well. That's as big as I can get those letters. So he continues on. Page, the introduction. This is still in the introduction to let you know what the book is about. I was discouraged, but not surprised. As an ethnobotanist, a scientist who works with indigenous peoples to document their uses of local plants. See, he's one of the persons that is looking for indigenous people's use of their plants. Okay, so let's see if we can get this a little bit closer. All right, so I'd been studying the healing practices of the shamans of the northeast Amazon for almost 15 years with the Tirios, the original Amazon warriors. I'd hunted forest pigs with poison-tipped arrows with the Curios, a tribe of semi-nomadic hunter-gatherers. I'd found plants that could cure excruciating insect stings within minutes. And with the Yanomami, the so-called fierce people, I'd participated in curing rituals that entailed the ingestion of titanic quantities of hallucinogenic snuff. Yet, in 12 years of working with the Tidio tribe, I had never seen a case of diabetes, at least one that I could recognize. I turned to the physician who had been sent with me to provide Western health care to the villagers to assist me with my research. We should pack up and get ready to move out on the cargo plane. That'll be here next week, he said. I said. He nodded his assent, replying, that will give me plenty of time to finish seeing everyone who needs my help. The next morning was so exceedingly hot, I was sweating before I woke up. As I sat up, rubbing the sleep out of my eyes, I was visited by an old friend from the neighboring tribe. Akoi was a Sikiana Chicana, a people famed for their bellicose nature, the dread and terror of their more peaceable neighbors, according to an early explorer's account. Their traditional homelands lay to the southwest along the banks of the mighty Trombetas River, with exchanged greetings in Portuguese, which we both spoke well enough to converse freely. I began conveying my disappointment that I had come so far in search of a treatment for diabetes, yet the Tidios appeared to know neither the disease nor a remedy for it. So he came to the Amazon looking for a treatment for diabetes, and it doesn't exist in the Amazon. Interesting. He was unfamiliar with the term diabetes, described the symptoms, he said. I told him about the sores between the toes, the incessant thirst, the fading eyesight. His face broke into triumphant smile. Well, maybe the TDOs don't know that sickness, but I do, he said. Stunned, I asked him, you know this ailment? Sure, he said. Can you treat it? I stammered. Of course, he replied confidently. Come on, I'll show you how. Well, arrogant prick knows how to deal with diabetes relatively easily. Interesting. Let's find out what the shaman has to say. From the bellicose tribe that was horrible to all their more peaceful neighbors. Of course, he replied confidently, come on, I'll show you how. I grabbed my machete and followed him to the edge of the village where the jungle began. Together we entered the twilight green world of the forest. First, he used his machete to peel long strips of white bark off a towering tree, and then scraped the pinkish red inner bark into the cut leaf of the wild banana. Then he added the crushed waxy green leaves of a trailside herb to the pile. Next, he sliced off the stems of a twisted gray vine and that snaked its way into the canopy, and he carefully collected the sap into a container he made from the leaf of a nearby palm. All natural. He brought it all back to the village. I measured and weighed each ingredient to get the precise recipe before the old shaman began boiling it all together in an ancient clay pot over a wood fire. As he stirred the potion, I began writing a detailed account of the experience in my field notebook, a firm believer in checking, and rechecking information, especially when working in a second language. I asked him to describe the symptoms of the disease he treated with the medicine he was busily preparing. You wash with it then when you are unable to urinate, he said, and you drink it when your feet are sore. I was stunned. Clearly this was not a treatment for diabetes. Had something been lost in translation? Had he shown me his remedy merely out of a desire to please or impress me? It's diabetes. What do you mean, rubbing it on the sore? Or was this perhaps some sort of trick to humiliate or test me? Not knowing the answers, I was uncertain how to proceed. I re-asked the question, but which affliction could be treated by the potion and receive the same response? The shaman finally said that the potion was ready, and I filled 2 plastic sample jars with a thick reddish-brown liquid. I thanked the shaman and, confused and a bit crestfallen, carried the bottles through the tropical downpour back to my thatched hut. That night, I was writing up my field notes by the dim yellow light of the kerosene lantern in a makeshift wooden table, while the physician accompanying me saw his patients in the back of the hut. He came out suddenly, clearly shaken. Come quickly, he said. You have to see this. So the doctor, which went to the jungle to treat those people for their ailments, was surprised by something. All right. His agitation was palpable. You could perceive it. I picked up my lantern and ducked into his little examining room. Stretched out on an ancient dusty cot lay a woman dying of diabetes. She was about 35, pale, bloated, nauseated, and weak, with persistent itching in her legs. She had a burning thirst and a gangrenous sores between several of her toes. That's it, he said excitedly. Classic type 2 diabetes. I've taken a blood sugar level reading and it's over 500, almost fatal. So the doctor's excited that he found somebody sick. Fine. Type 2 diabetes. 35 years old, pale, bloated, nauseated, weak, and itching in her legs. All right. What can you do for her? What do you give her? I asked. You tell me, he replied. We're in the middle of the jungle here. Even if I had insulin, there's no way to keep it chilled so it won't spoil. I had some pills that can temporarily reduce blood sugar, but I ran out of those in my last expedition, and I forgot to buy more. So he's out of his Western medicine. Besides, what would I have done with insulin? Shoot her full of it and then leave her to die? Just then, as if by some sort of jungle magic, the Sikiyana healer appeared at the entrance of our hut. But he entered and looked over the patient, asked for her a few questions, did a brief examination, and turned to me saying, "That's the disease I was telling you about. What are you going to give her?" We admitted, but we had no medicine that could effectively treat her condition. "Where's the potion I made for you today?" I handed him one of the bottles, and he unscrewed the top. He asked the physician for a spoon. So the shaman is asking the doctor for a spoon because the doctor doesn't have an answer. Wow, Western medicine didn't have an answer in the hot, musty rainforest, but the shaman did. So let's find out how he is teaching the doctor. Where's the potion? He asked the physician for a spoon, filled it twice, and gave it to the patient, then helped her back to her hut. By the next morning, her blood sugar level was almost normal. The Sikiyana continued to give her the medicine 4 times a day. Within 3 days, she felt well enough to return to working in her garden, something she'd been unable to do for 2 years. 2 years she couldn't work in her garden because of type 2 diabetes. By the end of the week, her blood sugar level was normal, and the gangrenous sore that had oozed between her toes for over 18 months had started to heal. Yeah, dengue, yeah, got that. For almost 20 years, I've been combing the remote corners of the Amazon jungle searching for plants that heal. I'm an ethnobotanist, a plant hunter, a shaman's apprentice, on the trail of natural compounds that can treat diseases for which modern medicine has no cure. For all those involved, ethnobotanists, marine biologists, chemists, physicians, even rainforest shamans, this is a quest powered by the desperation of the ill and the compassion of those who would cure them. The desperation of the ill and the compassion of those who would cure them. As our culture races to embrace technology, it may seem quaint or quixotic to seek new therapeutic compounds from the world around us, yet the history of Western civilization can be written in terms of its reliance and utilization of natural products. Western medicine still depends on plants and animals. Our hospitals, pharmacies, and medicine chests brim with drugs derived from nature. Book saying it, not me, book saying it. While the invention of synthetic chemistry in the 30s reduced our reliance on the natural world as our sole source of medicines, an electrifying renaissance is well underway as we comb the far corners of the planet for healing compounds. Within the course of the past decade, this quest has gone from being a marginal exercise to a mainstream concern. Mother Nature has been devising extraordinary chemicals for more than 3.5 billion years, and new technologies increasingly facilitate our ability to discover, study, manipulate, and use compounds that never before. The best evidence, during the last 5 years, most major pharmaceutical companies have launched new programs to find, isolate, analyze, and develop these medicines. New technologies enhance rather than diminish nature's value as a source of healing compounds, the base being nature's value. At the dawn of the 21st century, scientists hang by slender nylon ropes in rainforest canopies 120 feet above the forest floor, collecting undocumented species of spiders whose venom could revolutionize the way we treat chronic pain and paralysis. Meanwhile, other researchers don dry suits and dive below the polarized caps to capture fish that have evolved a natural antifreeze that may one day improve the way we store organs to be transplanted. And still others trek across burning desert sands, searching for vipers whose poison may help reinvent treatment of high blood pressure. The hunt for nature's healing magic represents an eternal quest that has taken us into the tombs of the pharaohs, the gleaming futuristic laboratories of the National Institutes of Health, the recently discovered hydrothermal vents and jagged cracks and crevices that furrow the ocean's floor. This book details the search, past, present, and future, as we follow in the footsteps of those who have sought and continue to seek miraculous new medicines from Mother Nature. So, Some Poison for Your Pain. This is the first book. I was going to do Einstein Never Used Flashcards or anything else, but considering my current health situation and my T's, I will be focusing on Medicine Quest, and I'll be reading more of this. That was just 5 pages. It was from 11 to 16, so yeah, it was 5 pages. Not much. 25 minutes. Some Poison for Your Pain. It's chapter 1. The difference between a deadly poison and a life-saving medicine can be very small. In fact, it is sometimes merely a question of dosage. And my I'm not necessarily feeling the kind of, sort of. When I went to the Reiki master, she told me that I was still under some of the influence of dengue, and whenever I breathe rough, I feel that it's still dengue affecting my immune system. However, my issues, dengue wouldn't have pointed anything out if I didn't have those issues to begin with. So yeah, I've overstressed my lungs, and I've pushed my my liver, and I've pushed my my pancreas. Thank you very much. So those are 3 things that I'm taking T's for: lungs, liver, and pancreas. And guess how many medicines that I'm taking from Western medicine to focus on those things which the doctors have told me that my glucose levels are too high and I've got the beginnings of emphysema. How many medicines did I get from Western medicine to treat any of that? So, I am feeling better. I'm smoking a little bit less. I'm still trying to get under half a pack. Now I'm like happy if I don't go past 15 a day. Compared to 40, yeah, it's better, but still. The only thing doctors could say is quit smoking, and maybe it won't get worse. But they had nothing to help or heal. The teas that I'm taking do make me feel better. They are expectorants. There are days when I can breathe better, but I cough, and I know that's better because coughing doesn't means that I can actually breathe. When I don't cough, I can't. I can barely breathe. So I prefer the coughing to the not breathing. I would prefer breathing without coughing, but I guess little by little we'll get there. But just to finish off this one page, it'll be 27 minutes and I'll go off to lunch. Time was running out, and the indefatigable frog detective, Dr. John Daly, decided to risk everything in one of the boldest scientific crapshoots of the 20th century. Daly had in his possession a tiny vial of an almost irreplaceable frog skin extract that held the possibility of revolutionizing the way we treat pain that might be turned into $1 billion a year medicine. Wow, so much money. But we're here to cure people, right? No, it's all about the money. And that might relieve incredible agony and human suffering. Yet he knew that analyzing the compound would destroy what little he had left of the precious substance, and he was fully aware that he might not ever be able to find it again. Yeah, you can't find those toads very easily. For over a quarter century, Daly had been combing the most remote jungles of Central and South America, braving bandits, guerrillas, narco-traffickers, malaria, and myriad of other hazards on what many would consider to be a quixotic quest. He was in search of tiny poison dart frogs and the powerful chemicals embedded in their skin. I've seen those. The blue and green skin, they're tree frogs. They're around here as well. People here are afraid of them, not because of the poison skin, because they're tree frogs and they have suction cups. So once they, stick to you, if they get scared, you can kill them, but they'll still be stuck on there. You have to cut off the skin in order to cut off the suction cups. So yeah, people are scared of them because they can't get them off. Yeah, I can't do Nicorette gum. I tried that when I was flying. 10-hour flight between Brazil and the U.S. Can't smoke on a flight, obviously now. So I tried Nicorette gum, and it was just nasty tasting. Thinking about the patch, but there's something about the fact of smoking a cigarette. And nowadays, my teeth are screwed, so I can't even chew any gum. But yeah, it's not that I'm menosprezando not considering that option. Yes, it's a good one. Lots of people get by on that. I haven't been able to use it for my own personal reasons, but that was a good idea, and I thank you for that. He was in search of the tiny dart frogs. Daly knew that Indians in northwestern Colombia rubbed the skins of these frogs in their blow darts so that even a scratch would prove lethal. He had already found a 1-inch species, the aptly named Phyllobatis terribilis, a single individual of which harbored enough poison to kill 10 men or 20,000 mice. It was Daly's fervent belief that these potent poisons might one day help alleviate human suffering. So here we are at the end. Page 1. Then, when Daly began his investigations in the 1960s, the technology necessary to analyze the frog compounds was both slow and tedious. Unlike the Amazonian cururu frog, that's the one that I was talking about, the cururu frog. That's a tree frog down here in Brazil, which can tip the scales at over 7 pounds. Poison arrow frogs are tiny enough to perch comfortably on the tip of your little finger. Not only was Daly sometimes unable to collect enough frogs to extract the amounts necessary to complete the study, but the chemical complexity of these compounds made it nearly impossible to synthesize them in the lab. You can't synthesize it. Wow. Vapes are actually worse. Vapes are my pulmonologist actually told me he's had kids 17, 18, 19 years old coming in with problems of emphysema, something that 30 years later should be a problem because of the vapes. They're very, very dangerous. They're a lot worse than actual cigarettes, but I'm not a doctor. I don't know anything. That's just my personal perspective on it. I have a couple of friends using vape pens. They are using it. They prefer it. They can actually smoke indoors because there's no smoke to bother other people. But as far as what my doctor told me, they will be feeling it later on. So, yeah, well, true. But that's using it to quit. Yeah. I need to think about that. Vape pens are too damn expensive for me personally. But yeah, I'll figure. I appreciate the lemongrass tea. Yeah, I have lemongrass essence that I'm not putting in my tea. But it has been there. Peter had mentioned lemongrass, and I found the essence. So, buffos, toads, yeah, green tree frogs, yeah. Yeah. Okay, so back to the book. Kururu, which they can't synthesize it. Chemicals, too many chemicals in there. A 1966 article in Daly's research on Colombian frogs was published in Medical World News and caught the eye of Charles Myers. Then a graduate student conducting research in Panama and now a senior scientist in the American Museum of Natural History in New York City. Unlike Daly, who was primarily trained as a chemist, Myers was a herpetologist, a biologist specializing in reptile and amphibians. Hence his background complemented that of Daly's. Myers wrote a letter to Daly proposing a collaboration that has continued to the present day. The two Americans began their collaboration in Panama, but then moved south. In 1974, they collected a brilliantly colored orange, red, and white frog known as Epipedobatis tricolor near Santa Isabel in southwestern Ecuador. When Daly injected an extract of Epipedobatis skin into a mouse, the rodent immediately arched its tail over its back, the so-called Straub tail reaction, which is the response usually generated by an opium-like painkiller. Believing he had found merely an amphibian equivalent of opium, the scientist then treated the mouse with naloxone, an opiate blocker, which he expected would cause the creature to lower its tail. The mouse, however, did not respond, and the tail remained arched over its back. This intrigued and excited Daly because it meant that he was on the trail of one of the holy grails of modern medicine, a non-sedating, potentially non-addictive, non-opioid painkiller. Not only did the new chemical named epibatidine in honor of the frog kill pain, but it also proved 200 times more potent than morphine, and it appeared to exert its effects in a manner completely different from that of opium. So, a frog. One of the best painkillers. This was in 1974. Do we have anything on the market today? I wonder what happened to it since 1974. This book was published. I actually bought this in Mexico. There's a little town in Mexico where hippies like to go, and there's all kinds of funky books there. But this, yeah, that's where I was when I bought this one, because it tickled my fancy. And this book was written in 2000. Copyright Mark J. Plotkin, 2000. Okay, so that's publication date of this. So between 74 and 2000, I haven't seen this medicine, which is better than opiates, evidently, and non-addicting. So here we were, 1974, epibatidine in honor of the frog kills pains and has a manner completely different from that of opium. The bad news, however, is that epibatidine was so toxic and had too many negative side effects to be used in humans. Dalai and his colleagues, well, that explains my question. I should have continued reading him instead of being an arrogant prick. Sorry about that, folks. His colleagues thought they might analyze the molecule to determine its exact structure, which would allow them to manipulate the epibatidine molecule in order to produce a version less toxic but still potent. Unfortunately, the laboratory technology necessary for purifying, analyzing, and synthesizing the molecule did not exist at the time. And they had used up the little bit of poison they had managed to collect. It was time to return to the jungle. The original epibatidine had been extracted from frogs collected from two different locales in 74. When scientists returned to Ecuador 2 years later, one population of the amphibians had completely vanished. Much of the surrounding forest had been felled and converted to banana plantations. Fortunately, they were able to find these frogs at another site, but only enough to collect less than 1 milligram of the poison. Then in 1984, 10 years later, a passage of the Convention of International Trade in Endangered Species Treaty made it exceedingly difficult, if not impossible, to legally collect and export poison dart frogs, particularly in the large quantities necessary for chemical analysis of the toxin. And habitat destruction in western Ecuador was on the increase. Attempts to breed the frogs in the lab were successful, but the frogs contained no epibatidine. Okay, so I was thinking, oh, breed the motherfuckers. But the bred ones don't have the thing. It must be something about their natural environment. I'm assuming. Let's read on. So Dalai had a tiny and finite supply of the epibatidine, and demand for the compound for testing purposes was increasing. Dalai stored his precious poison, awaiting the day when modern technology would improve to the point of being able to unlock one of Mother Nature's most closely guarded and potentially useful secrets. In 1990, Dalai decided it was time to roll the dice. So, out of the freezer, where are we at? There we go. Out of the freezer, he took the tiny vial with the precious epibatidine inside. No new epibatidine had been collected in more than a decade. Meanwhile, the frog's habitat was being decimated as the human population in southwestern Ecuador greatly expanded, causing an enormous decline in forest cover. However, analytical methods and instruments that greatly improved with tools like nuclear magnetic resonance, NMR, and gas chromatography, infrared spectrography, made all the more effective by the microchip revolution already well underway. Since the analysis of the chemical entailed the destruction of the tiny sample that Dalai had, the decision to analyze the epibatidine was an enormous gamble. The gamble paid off. The structure of the molecule was revealed. Within 2 years, scientists were able to synthesize the molecule to create a limitless supply for experimentation. Laboratories around the world eagerly began investigating the potential utility of this strange chemical from a tiny rainforest frog. Interestingly, epibatidine bears a chemical resemblance to nicotine. Right around the time that Daly and his colleagues were determining the chemical structure of epibatidine, researchers at Abbott Laboratories were investigating nicotine-like chemicals for the treatment of Alzheimer's disease. Taking note of the similar structure of epibatidine, but aware that it was too toxic for human use, they began to create similar compounds, hoping that one might prove highly effective as a painkiller. Of the hundreds of molecules devised and tested, one stood out, ABT 594. Hope you guys can see it right there, ABT 594. Alright, so not only did the lack of toxicity of epibatidine, but it proved effective against several types of pain, including one caused by nerve damage, against which even opiates are relatively ineffective. Unlike opiates, ABT 594 appears to be non-addictive, enhances alertness rather than causing sedation, and has relatively little effect on the respiratory system. Because it is so different from morphine, it appears to offer unlimited potential as a treatment for pain, provided that epibatidine makes it through the FDA approval process and enters the marketplace. Dr. Michael Williams of Abbott Labs stated, "It lacks the major side effects of morphine, like constipation and addiction. ABT 594 is proving to be a very interesting molecule. It is the fervent belief of scientists like Daly and Williams that these and other potential natural poisons will help alleviate human suffering." A poison is any substance man-made or found in nature that produces disease, conditions, tissue injury, or otherwise interrupts natural life processes when in contact with the body. Toxins are poisonous substances produced by living creatures, including amphibians, bacteria, insects, plants, and reptiles. Venoms are poisons of animal origin that are injected by spines, such as is the case with sea urchins, stings, such as honeybees, or teeth, rattlesnakes. Poisonous creatures have always been objects of fear and fascination. People worship deadly cobras in ancient India. The bite of the tarantula was believed to by denizens of Europe in the Middle Ages to cause an uncontrollable urge to dance. The whirling folk dance known as the tarantela was inspired by this notion, and citizens of the American South still handle venomous serpents to demonstrate their devotion to the Lord. But these days, there's a major pharmaceutical companies that are most interested in these poisons, and the snakes are huge. A single blockbuster drug like the high blood pressure drug Capotin, which was developed based on studies of Brazilian viper venom, can earn over $1.5 billion a year. The holy grail of current drug study is finding a new medicament. That's a new word for me. I never knew that. Medicament that is effective for treating a particular malady, particularly an ailment that has no other effective treatment or cure, which meets certain criteria. The compound should ideally have a unique and previously unknown chemical structure, making it easier to patent. Money, money, money. Again, function in a unique pathway in the human body, meaning that it operates differently and, we hope, more effectively than other pharmaceuticals used to treat a given condition. Be a small molecule, make it easier and less expensive to synthesize, be quick-acting, and have no unwanted side effects such as addiction, for example. Venoms are the end result of billions of years of evolution. These molecules have been honed to generate a response in the body of the victim that is quick, dramatic, and often fatal. This response may include pain, numbness, asphyxiation, hemorrhage, clotting, shock, paralysis, or a change in blood pressure. Some venoms are composed of hundreds of various poisons, each of which does something different when injected into the body of another creature. Precisely because these poisons are so refined, their potential as medicines is enormous. For example, areostatin, a protein found in an Asian pit viper, appears to inhibit the spread of melanoma cells. And, melanoma, that's cancerous cells. I believe that's skin cancer. But anyway, areostatin, a protein from an Asian pit viper, appears to inhibit the spread of melanoma cells, and a compound based on the venom of an Israeli scorpion binds to the cells of a type of brain cancer and seems to keep them from spreading to other parts of the body. SNX482 from Cameroon, red tarantula venom, may lead to a new class of medicines for the treatment of neurological disorders. Gila monsters from the American Southwest have a substance in their venom known as exendin, which stimulates the secretion of insulin, meaning it may one day be used to prevent the the progression of diabetes. And an enzyme in the venom of the Russell's pit viper, one of the world's most beautiful and most deadly snakes, is now being employed in a diagnostic test for lupus. Okay, so, wow, again, an enzyme in the venom of the Russell's pit viper, one of the world's most beautiful and most deadly snakes, is now being employed in a diagnostic test for lupus. Toxins produced by lethal organisms are also being employed for medical uses. Minuscule amounts of the deadly botulism bacteria are proven to be effective for the treatment of a rare condition that paralyzes the vocal cords. Under the trade name Botox, botulism toxin is being injected into facial muscles that cause wrinkles. The toxin temporarily paralyzes them, resulting in a surgery-less facelift. Though given the choice between surgery and having one of the world's most poisonous substances injected into their heads, most people still choose the knife. Well, no, this is 2000. 20 years later, Botox is a big thing. So we see how 20 years affects what they considered in this book and what is being used in the real world today, in the current modern day. Toxin molecules typically accomplish their deadly tasks through the three-stage process. First, they attach to a healthy cell, then they enter the cell, then they exert their deadly effects on the cell's machinery, causing it to malfunction and or die. Working with a form of the deadly diphtheria bacillus, scientists are devising the means to develop a poison into cancer cells, thereby destroying them. Similar efforts are underway with the tetanus toxin to treat diseases like Tay-Sachs. Venoms continue to play an absolutely fundamental role in our understanding of how cells function. They have proven essential in helping us comprehend ion channels, which are pores in a cell's surface that control the flow of calcium, potassium, and sodium in and out of the cells, and which play a key role in transmission of nerve impulses, that is, how nerve cells talk to and activate each other. Because these venoms are highly specific and only interact with particular channels, they are of inestimable use in mapping these channels. In the words of the National Cancer Institute's Dr. David Newman, using venoms, we can turn something on or off in particular cells, which teaches you something about the function of that cell. You can block a certain response and observe what happens when you add something like a medicine. You can learn about everything from the structure and function of ion channels to how cells communicate with each other. In the laboratory, venoms help teach us how medicines function in the human body. Drugs tend to operate in two basic ways. Many interact directly with the body's metabolism. Aspirin represents a classic example, mitigating pain by interfering with the body's production of prostaglandins, which cause the discomfort. Other drugs attack or interfere with the disease-causing organism itself. Penicillin would fall into this category. It inhibits the ability of the invading bacteria's cells to reproduce, but does not interact with human cells. You worked hard for your wrinkles. Yeah, my scars too got them there. They might be. I'm not sure what they're doing to Alzheimer's patients, but evidently this book will cover it. And they do have new stuff that they're going on lines. And yes, they have hidden as much of this stuff as possible because, after all, they need to make their money. The laboratory evidence drugs help operate in human cells. All drugs have a target, a site of action in the body. Trying to make that a little bit more readable for you guys so you might be able to follow along, perhaps. I don't know, maybe. All right. All drugs have a target, a site of action in the body. Many of these targets are receptors, protein molecules in the cell's surface that interact with other molecules. The receptor is often described as the lock into which the key molecule must fit. Lock and key. Drugs can either fit into receptors and elicit a certain response, in which case they are termed agonists, or they can block the receptors, eliciting no response but keeping other chemical messages from interacting with the receptors, antagonists. As with the ion channels, some venom components interact only with very specific receptors, allowing us to map our nervous system with extraordinary detail. Knowledge of these receptor sites is already helping scientists to design some drugs from scratch. In the future, when all the receptor sites and all cells have been mapped, scientists may design all drugs that way. Until that day, however, Mother Nature will play an essential role. And we're down here below that, page 10. So we'll go through that. I'll mark this page. Instituto Nacional de Antropología y Historia. Yeah, that was the Anthropological Museum there in Mexico, but that's the Institute for Anthropology, because I did not get this in Mexico City. I got this book in San Miguel de Allende, St. Michael, my place. So that would be my video of today. 10 pages short. I will be doing more on this. This is actually something that interests me, and I may be doing more. I also enjoy, well, let's just read a couple of quotes from the Dalai Lama. Let's find out what we have in here. Redefining the objective. Oh, but it's long stretches. That's right. Ethics and society. Yeah. I'll be reading that on another day, and I will let you guys know, and I'll put that title in there. But for now, the next couple of videos that I'll be doing is Medicine Quest, right? In search of nature's healing secrets. So, I don't know, I'm not a doctor. I'm just trying to figure this shit out. Thank you for popping in. I appreciate it. I'll be on Jacob's channel this afternoon. I'll be on Ario's channel with Leo this evening. And much love. Peace. Thank you for your patience and understanding. I'll see you on the flip side.